Okay, and welcome to my World Machine demo. So this is going to be an intro, um, kind of an introduction to World Machine. The way this class or lectures are kind of set up is I'm going to go over the initial World Machine kind of how-to, like these buttons do this, these buttons do that, navigation, that kind of thing. And then I'm going to take you guys through a series of different creation styles, using the flow maps, using the elevation maps, and different techniques for texturing and mapping and whatnot. So hopefully the goal with this is by the end of however long this thing is, you guys should have a decent enough understanding to go off and, make a bunch of cool shit yourself, which is probably why you took this in the first place. So let's just get started. So this is, again, World Machine. Up top here, I'm really going to be focusing on the elements that I typically am going to be using in the classes. This is actually it's a deceivingly deep program. It's, visually pretty simple, but it can get really, really in depth. So this is our first view. This is our layout view, and you can see that that this little node graph is highlight. Well, actually, this isn't even technically the layout view. This is the node view, and you can see that selected by the nodes here. This is what it's going to default at. This is our layout view right here. And you can see, again, if I zoom out, this is essentially just showing the fractal. And again, as I zoom in, since it's a fractal, we have quite a bit of detail. This is the Explorer view. This is essentially kind of in a very abstract way. This is kind of what it would look like, essentially, in the world. Now, the way I'm navigating right now is I'm navigating with the left mouse button pulling me forward. Right mouse button is controlling elevation. Middle mouse button isn't really doing anything right now. And again, there's different views for all of this. We have a walk view, which will actually just put us right on the terrain and allow us to, well, just do that. Just walk right over the surface. This is super useful, especially when you guys want to get, let's actually build this terrain out. It's this green button here. This is actually going to render out the terrain, and you can see it here. There's I'll just show you in our actual render view here. This is the actual rendered terrain. Okay, so we have this nice little navigation mode, which allow you to kind of view the terrain. It's not anything too crazy. Again, even if I go in and start to up-res this resolution here, we shouldn't see too much of a change in this view. This green button obviously is going to build the chain. But again, you're not really seeing too much of a difference in this view. This is really just more for you to get kind of an idea of what it would look like. We have a drive button, just kind of like a car. And literally, it's just set and go. So it's like you're literally in a car. And middle mouse button is controlling the speed of that. And hover. Oops, slow down. I should never use hover, so. Come back over into our render view. Now, this render view, because, this navigation view is cool, but it's not really doing a whole lot for us. It's a nice approximation, kind of gives you an idea of what the world is. What you're seeing right here, this white box, this is the extent of the layout. This is corresponded by a couple different things. Obviously, the main extent is going to kind of be the broad stroke on this. This is going to, if I do 16 by 16, let's come back out and see if it's going to update. There it goes. You'll see it update. Okay, and essentially what this is basically doing is this is saying now this terrain is 16 kilometers by 16 kilometers, which means it's effing huge. Make sure I type that in correctly. My bad, not 16. Yeah, that's way big. Let's do 16 by 16 because 16 is actually still really big. Again, we'll just jump back out to see it. There it is. So you can see the area increase. Now this is important, especially if you guys want to do very small units, because what this is essentially doing is this is just scaling on top of the fractal. Okay, so you can see it here. Now we're only looking at a really small subset of this fractal. Okay, so if you suddenly want to do really broad, if you just want to do like a little tiny piece of the terrain, you can do it off of this. But remember, there's much more of it out there outside of this extent. So when we go in and we start scaling and playing with this stuff, we're only seeing this on a micro level, right, instead of the macro level, at least when we alter the scale down to that 1K by 1K. Now I'm going to put it back up to about 8K. And as I was saying, the green button here, this is going to build our chain. When we start laying out our terrain and our general layout, this is what we're going to be previewing and looking in. We have two main views to preview, and we have this top guy, which, as you can see, if I left click in this view, it's going to move essentially an OmniLight around. Right mouse button is going to tumble, and middle mouse button is going to zoom in. Now, in this view, right mouse button zooms, and left mouse button tumbles. Okay, so again, very different. There's several different modes here. We can see the information about the whatever node we're on. We can tell to use texture detail or not have texture detail. We can actually tell it to actually render it out. It's going to do kind of like a scan line render, which is kind of nice. Reset the view, especially it's really useful if you start doing something like this where you're out in the middle of nowhere. You just hit that button, it'll bring you right back into it. Free will allow you to just totally navigate the world. Orbit is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to orbit around the centroid. Okay, I don't really use orbit because, as you can see, the navigation isn't really that great. Center it up, and that's a little better now. Okay, and again, left button is allowing me to kind of tumble around the object. Right button is allowing me to zoom. And 2D view. 2D view is essentially what you would be seeing in the actual, like, the map, like if you were to look at it just in Photoshop. Which actually brings up the next really important point about World Machine. World Machine is basing everything off of displacement and off of fractals. It's pushing everything from, if you're a Max user, it's Z up. If you're any other normal 3D program, it tends to be Y up. Okay? Which basically means the projection for the planes, the displacement, is all from top down. Okay? This is really cool if you want to do flow maps and elevation maps, displacement maps. It makes things like cliff faces, the actual kind of carved out rock chunks. You can't do them in this, essentially. You have to use a different program like ZBrush, or use, and we're going to show a little bit about how to get some of that stuff implemented as well. But this is essentially a procedural fractal top-down generator. Okay, and that'll make more sense as we go on, because that's something that we kind of are constantly talking about. So I'm going to come back into this. This is our device view, and again, you can see here there's the hotkeys, F5, F6, F7, F8. F5 will bring us back into our little world view. Now, similar to Unreal, we have kind of like these node caches here. Like you can add nodes and you can move them around to keep your scenes really organized. I actually don't use these this much because I'm an unorganized slob. Sorry. Right-clicking on that, by the way, will take you into the node. If you double-click on the group settings, though, you can type, whatever you want. You can change the color formats. You can kind of have a lot that you can do with it, and it's useful because it'll save it, which is nice. Test. If we want, we can take these nodes here. I'm just going to move them outside the box. And I'm doing that by left-clicking on the node, just dragging it where I want. I'm going to select a bunch of them. And I'm going to click on that. And if I go group selected devices, it's going to make a new group. Okay? And we can see it there. So, pretty useful. Yep, that's fine. Put that back into here. And you'll see it move. Okay, it matters where the nodes are in the boundaries of these boxes. Okay, so let's actually talk about navigating on this guy, because it can be a little weird at first. Right click is going to pan left and right. Middle mouse button's your zoom. And left click is your marquee and your select. Okay, it's kind of all the same thing. If you want to do a drag rectangle, you just click, drag, just like any other program. Copying and pasting of these nodes, Control C, Control V. Pretty standard. Deleting of the nodes, delete. So one of the things I want to call out here is, and I want you to kind of notice this, because this is kind of a pain in the butt about World Machine, and this is at least my understanding of it. I might be totally wrong, but I've always just dealt with this. So if you notice here, let me just come in here and change some of these device nodes up. You notice I'm not getting any undos. In World Machine 2, this doesn't work, okay? Like, I think this is, actually, I don't think this is a professional version. Let me check. It doesn't even tell me. It's just a standard 30. Yeah, I don't think this is a professional version. It may do it in the professional version, but in this version, it doesn't do it, which really sucks, okay? So as you're working on your terrains, you want to save, and you probably want to save copies of your terrains. It'll help you along the way. I strongly recommend doing it. It's a good habit to get into anyway. It'll kind of save your butt as well. Now, the way World Machine works, and again, as you kind of just saw me here playing with this guy, if I double click on any of these nodes, I get all this information about the node, and obviously, depending on the device, depending on the generator, there's thousands of nodes. My general workflow, and this is kind of true for a lot of the software, is you find a couple things that you really like, and you utilize them repeatedly. So the big thing that a lot of you guys are probably going to want to deal with is the feature scale. And you notice as I'm adjusting the feature scale, it's getting really noisy. That's because the stepness and the height is really large. Just lower all that back down. Show you what this looks like. We'll build that. Again, every time we do something, we got to build. And you notice even if the device is not connected, here, you see that? The Advanced Perlin, the second one, is not part of the device. It's still going to build it. So you want to be careful about having a bunch of floating nodes in your scene, because it can take a long time to build this. Ta-da! That's what our really hot terrain looks like. Okay? World Machine does not do great things on small terrain. Especially at least with the Perlin fractal and rigid. Doesn't really do that great. You can go in and play with a couple of these guys just to see what they're doing, but you're really not going to be getting a ton of really great things out of this, at least out of the Advanced Perlin for smaller stuff. If you guys want to do smaller stuff, you can do it. You just need to find the right one that's going to work for it. The Perlin noise tends to work a little better, primarily because you don't have that level of options. You have your strength and your noise, essentially, and your octaves that you can play with. So, you just have to basically adjust the overall intensity. So we'll come into here. Change this again. Let me go back. Delete that guy. And you'll be doing this a lot where you go through, nope, not that one. You'll go through and you'll delete your noise out. Or you'll delete whatever you're working on, depending on if it's not going to give you the results you want. A lot of these nodes also have the random seed generator, which is pretty useful. And again, as you can see as I go through, there's all sorts of different versions of these terrains. Okay. And a lot of it is honestly playing with the terrain. and kind of figuring out what kind of feature that you want to figure out if it's going to be right for whatever you're doing. Again, Verneuil, same thing. Just another fractal. Okay. So constant is essentially just that. This is essentially a flat plane. Okay. So what is that useful for? So let's come back into this, or not this node, but let's go back into the first guy. I'm going to drag. Actually, we'll use the advanced purlin because it has a shaping option. Okay, you'll see a lot of these nodes, they have inputs, okay? Now, primarily they have, not primarily, but at least in the advanced purlin, we have a shaping guide, a distortion guide, and a persistence guide. I primarily play with these top two, and I'll show you exactly what those do. So I'm going to put the shaping guide in, and I'm going to raise up this constant. Okay, do you see that? Essentially controlling the terrain. Okay, that in conjunction with the elevation and the overall steepness. Put that guy closer to 0. Build this out. Will give us a lower lying fractal. Okay, really useful for basic noise and stuff. Similar to Noisemaker and ZBrush. Not as cool, but it can be used. Okay, and again, you notice I wasn't in this primary height field when I checked this. Okay, this is an important thing to remember. If I click on any device and I come back in, I can right click. It'll take me into that view. I can also jump up into here. It'll take me into that view. Click that. Right click takes me back into that view. It's based off of what you have selected. Okay. So as you saw, when I clicked left clicked and I clicked into this shaping guide, I got this nice little line. Okay, this line is obviously the connector. It's the route. It's what's going into what. If I right click on that, I can say clear route points, which I don't really actually use. Like if you want to, you can, where is it? Give me that option. Oh, it's not adding the route point. If you go and you see where you see this little red dot, if I click on it, it's going to give me a route point, okay? So this is really useful for kind of organizing where these wires are going to go, because eventually you're, depending on what you're doing, these things can get really messy and really big really fast. So it's nice to kind of keep them organized a little bit. And if you want to get rid of them, clear route points. Okay. Some other awesome things about this little line here. If I want to add something into the chain, I don't need to disconnect these wires. I don't need to come here and say delete wire and then rewire things. I can leave it connected, and I can drag it right on top. You'll see it highlight yellow, and that's going to plug it in kind of the way it thinks that it should go. And for this, it's obviously the constants being piped into the shaping guide, and that's going back into the purlin. Okay, this height field is actually being put back into the shaping guide of this guy, and you can see him kind of working a little bit in there. The elevation center and all that stuff is pretty low, so probably not going to get too much of it, but it's in there. See if we can get anything a little nicer. Do something like that. You can kind of see it working on the underlying layer there a little bit. Okay. If I want to suddenly turn this node off, you can kind of see, just so you can track some of the fractal lines, you can see them kind of working through in there. Let's say I want to turn this guy off, or at least see what it looks like without it. I right click on it, and if I disable the device, it's going to turn the whole thing off. It's going to break it. You can see it right there. It turns it off. I can re-enable it by obviously hitting D. Just right-clicking on it works as well. And now again, or I can say bypass. Okay, bypass. You're going to get this little red box, little red node over it, and essentially it's going to act like it's not even there. Okay. Essentially, it would be going straight into that. Right? Let me just put that back up. Okay. Okay. So let's go ahead and delete these guys. So I'm just going to select them, and I'm going to hit delete. Yep. And delete. Hold Shift Delete. Just going to nuke it. It's not even going to give you a warning. And again, you can't Control Z this. Okay, you can't go back. Once it's gone, it's bye-bye. We'll do rigid. Cool. Okay. Now at the very top here again, you can see our generators. We have our layout generator, Perlin noise, advanced Perlin, constant, slope or gradient essentially. That's literally just a gradient fractal. Really good for doing hills or for or terrain that's shaped like this. Slopes. And again, within each of these options, there are more options. Color generator it's literally going to generate a color, and that can be useful for when you do overlays, for when you add things. There's a bunch of different things you can use these colors for, and we're going to talk a little bit about that stuff later. We're not going to actually use a color generator. We're going to use a bunch of other things. File input. This is where you can pull in new height maps. Make sure, yeah, is this, yes. You can actually pull in native file formats here. Let me grab a terrain piece here. And you can see it right there. This is one of the terrains that I made in World Machine earlier. And we're actually going to cover how we make this guy. There's some things that I would change in it, and I actually end up sculpting on it. But let's build that out and just show you what that looks like. Okay. Let's plot back into here. Which means, in case you guys are wondering, your ZBrush stuff, the stuff that you sculpt on, you can bring in here. It's going to do a displacement straight up, but this is useful. This is useful, and particularly for if you guys want to do low-lying debris and that kind of stuff, or if you want to erode around objects, or if you want to erode from objects. There's all kinds of really useful things for this, and this is really powerful. This is one of the things that makes World Machine ludicrously useful. If you have level design geo, level blockout geo, like terrain slopes or whatever, and you have, houses where enemies or something are going to come up out of, and you're like, well, I would like a really nice, at least for the sculpting, or at least to make a tile set, I would like at least a really nice flow map in between those two surfaces, right between the ground and the building. You can do that using this file input, so really useful. Output, this is where we're going to send out our height, the mesh, the bitmap, and where we're going to actually do overlays, which is actually how we would view any texturing and that kind of stuff inside of here. Mesh output's useful. Height map, I think, and bitmap output are probably the most useful out of this. Combiners, essentially exactly what they say. We have height choosers. We have exactly a chooser. That's kind of like, I'll just show you what this does. This basically gives you, it's kind of like a mix map inside of Max, and you have 3 different options, and you can modulate by, depending on what variable you choose, A, B, C, or, depending on what kind of math you're doing for your terrain, it can be useful. Primarily, I use this guy, the combiner, just a standard combiner. Gives you tons of different math averages, add, multiply, subtract, min, max, power, root, all that kind of stuff. Really useful for combining stuff. Okay, adding terrains, adding different height variables, canceling stuff out. All can be really useful for this. Filter, not the funnest looking thing, but has a ton of really powerful things. In particularly the clamps, simple transforms, terraces, curves. Check this out. You want to draw out your profile of, whatever. Let's run this through a shaping guide here and see what that does. I didn't do much there. Oops, sorry, wait a minute. So height field. Delete that. Oh, I set it up wrong. No. Delete wire. Delete wire. We'll just run this through here. This is essentially used kind of as a shaping guide, so we're going to go ahead and put a height field into that. So you can see this. Now again, this is taking this curve and putting it at that profile, right? Pretty cool. And again, we can smooth it out if we want to. And you can see it there, it's smoothing that curve. Go back in and, we can do all kinds of weird stuff. And you can kind of see it like updating there. And again, this will work on a whole slew of different things. It just depends on what you want it to do. We can also use this to help aid in shaping guides as well. We'll get some weird results with it, but you can see it right there. You can see it kind of overlying and underlying that surface. If I adjust the shaping a little bit, just that slopes as well, you can see it using that to kind of help in the shaping. And we can obviously tell it how much to use that by adjusting the level of influence on the shaping guide. So you can actually do quite a bit with this really quickly. Oh, there you go. Perfect. It's a cake. It's very, very ugly looking cake. Kind of looks like a button. Anyway, I digress. Let's go back into the filters. Simple transform, another really useful one. I'll show you what this is going to do. It gives you a number of options to do essentially formations like you would do for glaciers or for canyons. It'll give you that really nice straight down, run down, almost canyon-esque look on your shapes, which is really cool. And again, you'll want to dive in and play with all of those as well. Terrace is literally just exactly what it sounds. It's going to add terraces. So we'll see that. Do number of terraces. There we go. There we go. Again, useful if you want to, make a terrain like, I don't know, something you'd see in like Colorado. Important things to note about your building of your terrains as I've just been going through and doing it. The larger this is essentially your displacement map, the longer it's going to take to build the stuff, okay? That might not seem like a big deal, and it might seem obvious, but I want to touch on it because obviously with the more resolution you have, the cooler stuff is going to look, absolutely. But it's also one of those things where it can also be kind of to your detriment a little bit. So just because if it's too much, you're looking at a really long build time, which isn't really great either. So again, I'll build that. And we'll jump right through. And again, now, every time I change something inside a World Machine, I'm going to have to rebuild. Now, World Machine's smart, though. It's going to know what I build and what I didn't build and what needs to build. So if I hit this button right here, it really just built a terrace. And we'll just jump back in here and look at it. Because it already built all this other weird stuff, this weird marshmallowy thing that's going on here. It's fantastic. The next little tab I want to talk about here is the natural selectors, okay? World Machine by default comes with some really awesome things. It comes with, primarily erosion, which is probably the big thing a lot. Oops. When this happens, I just double click on it. and then I hit delete, which is probably what a lot of you guys know it from. Erosion has a lot of information on it. Let me pull up the docs. So if you guys go to worldmachine.com and you click on Learn, you're going to get a number of really useful things, primarily this table of contents. This is the big thing that, you know, you'd want to look at. If you can find out pretty much everything there is to know about the standard devices inside a World Machine. So again, really useful. I recommend you going there, bookmark this if you're going to be doing a lot of terrain stuff. Let's see here. We'll do an inverse. No filter. We'll run that down. I'm just going to do this really heavy so you can see this. And let's do channeled erosion so it's really deep. This look cool. And we'll build this. Now, erosion tends to take longer than a lot of other devices. I mean, obviously most of the natural devices tend to take longer because it's doing a bunch more math, doing a bunch of simulation stuff. I'm not actually sure exactly how it's calculating a lot of this stuff, but it obviously is taking more time. So be careful of going crazy with it. Like, you know, typically my workflow is this: as I start at a lower res terrain, kind of get a general look that I want, then I increase. Okay, it's kind of like sculpting in that sense, where you're, you know, working small then big. Okay, so again. And obviously that doesn't look great, but we can go in and really quickly here adjust the strength. We can tell it how hard the actual underlying structure is. The harder this is, the more of the structure it'll like the underlying base. It'll take, and this is like literally eroding the surface. Again, you can see here how much carrying that just did off of it, and I'll show you what this looks like. This is really cool. You can get some really awesome effects. Sometimes you get like that sand castle effect where you make a little sand thing and you dump a bunch of water on it. It's going to do that, and you can kind of see it already doing it there. But again, obviously it's going to take a little bit of time, so I'll pause this and then I'll show you the model. Okay, and again, you can see this took quite a bit longer. Not obviously crazy, but it took longer. And obviously you can see it's moving a bunch of stuff. Okay. Let's come back into our layout view. Selector does exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to select things, primarily heights. So again, I'll just drive this in here. This will actually be a good demo of an overlay as well. So I'm going to come back into our output, or is it? Yeah, it's our output. And I'm going to click the end of this height field, the very top node. I'm going to put that in. I'm going to take the selector and put this out on the overlay mode. Okay, and again, doing that so we can see what this is actually doing. Let me actually replace with the mask and turn off the ambient light. Okay, this is literally selecting a range in the height field, okay? So we just want the really upper top. There's really the upper top. Okay, we can see it there. Okay. What is this useful for? This is useful for allowing yourself to suddenly go, you know, the top of this guy kind of looks like a mushroom. So I want to add a bunch of noise onto it, but I don't want it to affect the underlying pieces because I really like it, or something like that. Not that this looks, you know, anything exciting, but you get the idea real quick here. So what we'll do is we'll take the select height, put it into this mask input here, okay? This is basically going to only allow this fractal to work off of that height, okay? Again, we can grab a constant here if we want to figure out how much height we actually want to put on it. So let's do that real quick. Plug you in. Let's give it a little bit of height, something like that. Put that in there. Okay, we don't want to go crazy with it, but you know, just add something. Okay. And You know, let's say we want to expand it a little bit, we can obviously do that as well. Okay. It'll likewise expand it. And we'll come back and grab our combiner. Left click, drag that in. Oop, wrong way, sorry. Put that as our primary. And then we'll put that in as our mixed. And we can just add it right on top. Okay. Now again, you can see that there is actually like a set limit to the overall height, so it won't go any higher than that. So you gotta, it's kind of a balance, right? You have to figure out, like if you're going to add this, you might want to go back into this chain, probably right around here, probably around the radial function. Oops. Let's maybe reduce the steepness just a little bit so it's going to take it down. And then you'll see that come back out here. Again, I pushed it way far down, so the erosion just took it all the way down. Maybe raise it back up just a little bit. Just a little bit. There we go. Pull it down. And again, a lot does, well, a lot in this. Okay, we're actually maxed out now because we added that, but you can see it's just adding that right back on top. Okay, and that's obviously how much of that add happens. Delete that. Let's come back into the selector. What are else some really cool things inside of here? I'm going to delete this node as well so we can see this in the overlay. And I'm going to raise you right back up. There we go. Selector will allow us to do slopes. Slope is exactly what it sounds like. It's the slope of face or of the fractal or however. Oh, sorry, we already showed that. I did the height selector. Right? Did I do height? I think I did height. Yeah, I did height before. Slope is going to do exactly that, just the slope of the angle of the face. So if you have like a 90-degree corner or whatever, it'll only select that. And you can obviously control the fall off to clamp it down to nothingness or to be really extreme. Okay, again, really useful for erosions or fractals, especially if you only want to affect certain things. And let's see what that looks like again using the overlay view. Just plug this guy right back in. See what we're affecting here. So you can see it a little bit. And let me pull that right back up. Maybe let's do the mid so I can get a little bit less value. We'll close that down. Okay, so we're really, let me turn down the ambient of this. We're getting this angle here. That's that slope essentially, or anything on that follows within that. Convexity, exactly what it sounds like. It's going to do a convexity map. I'm actually going to show you this guy. I like this this angle. This is pretty rad. This thing's pretty cool. Honestly, I like the way it looks more than anything. Sometimes it can be a little finicky, but it looks cool, which, you know, halfway there for that. Essentially, it's like a normal map, right? It's going to push this down and literally allow us to move the light around, okay? Control the elevation so we can clamp how extreme it is. It's basically taking the light, if you're looking at a flat plane, the higher this elevation is, the closer to straight up above the plane this is, right? That's straight on top. You can see it. It's 90 degrees is right above it. So, and again, it'll allow you to rotate. Really good if you want to do wind erosion on one side of a face, like a cliff wall or a face wall or something like that. Again, really useful. Or if you want to push stuff a certain way, you can use this to help drive the distortion or the displacement as well. And where is that flipper, equalizer, blur, expander? There we go. simple displacement. I'll just show you that really quick. Push this into here. Push this into here. Now watch this guy. This is going to do some fun little things. It's going to start to distort. Actually, I'll pull that off just because this is essentially going to push. Oh, well, we'll just run the same one back in. It's making it a little noisy, which is what I didn't want it to do. Let's just raise the elevation up. Okay, and if you don't know if you can see it, it's literally trying to push the plane. Okay, and it's using that lighting angle to do it. Okay. You gotta be careful. Obviously, you're gonna get some spikes depending on what the mask input's doing. So, but it can be really useful. That angle, select angle, is really powerful. Next is our converters. Okay, so how you generate your normal maps out of here. One of the ways. Well, the way out of here. You can generate it off of XNormal, which is what we're going to do a lot of. Okay, gives you a really nice normal map, though. And you can obviously flip your channels if you need to, depending on what your engine needs. So that's pretty rad. Colorizer. Colorizer is going to do exactly what the colorizer sounds like. It's going to add color. Oops, am I going the right way? Yes. Okay. We have a number of settings in here. We'll just mountain. Look, it's a mountain. I'm not rebuilding this plane, by the way, just to save time. In fact, you know what? I'll build it, but did a lower resolution here. Obviously, that erosion's still going to take a little bit of time, but it's chugging through pretty quick. Okay. So again, pretty cool, right? This is really useful. The colorizer is one of the really nice ways that you would get, say, your flow map. And how does that come out? That comes out literally right off the erosion map, comes out here. And I believe it's also in a couple other devices. But this is literally the channel flow that is happening to the erosion. And we can see that here in the colorizer. And we jump into the overlay view. And we can see what the erosion essentially was doing, which is really cool and really powerful. Wear map. So the wear map, to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure the best way to describe the wear map. I use the wear map to basically have to call out like the heavier areas, like where stuff is like just totally been beaten to hell. So I don't know if that's the actual usage for it. That's what I use it for. You can obviously drive this as a mask. Again, it's giving us the height field option. Disposition map. Again, this would be for at least in this context. It's going to be really useful for getting where getting the bulk of where the erosion is kind of dumping everything here. Okay, so it's basically taking all this stuff and shoving it down there. Okay, which is great, especially if you need to call that out, like if you need a separate texture or something, or a mask, which is primarily what we use a lot of this stuff for. Primarily, you're going to be taking this, and you notice by default, by the way, it's going to keep whatever you selected, so it's kind of a pain in that way. Let's do... delete that. Clear all. There we go. Let's do black to white. Okay. This is really useful for generating out the masks. Okay. One of the ways generating out the mask. This in and of itself isn't spitting anything out though. Okay. We need to actually get that out. And again, how we would do that is by using our output node. So let's say we want this disposition map here. We would take save bitmap, this guy. We'd drop it right on this end node, right before it goes into our overlay. Okay. This is going to double click on that, specify a file output, image output, the kind of format that you want, and you're going to have it build. When you hit write output to disk, it's going to build everything, and then it'll spit it out depending on where you put it. I didn't put it anywhere in particular, but where are you? I'll do it again. Write output. And we should see it somewhere in here, hopefully. Oh, there it is. Okay. Really useful. Same thing for everything, essentially. You want your height output? Same way. Take the height field, plug it into the height output. Okay, it'll build. It gives you the option. Typically, you're going to want to be using this 16-bit. Ideally, it would be better if it was a 32-bit, but, you know, use what you got to use. You can spit out a 32-bit raw format. I don't know what the hell this is, though. I don't use it. I use a 16-bit. I typically, if I'm using raw, I use the EXR or HDRI, or an HDR, which is high dynamic range. But I'm sure it's essentially the exact same thing. I just haven't looked into it. This is a really awesome thing, the splat converter. I'm going to pull this guy. Actually, yeah, you know, we'll use it here. So I'm going to take these 3 channels here. Not going to see anything here, so let's just reduce the number of inputs. Okay. And then I'm going to take this channel combiner here. Go boop, 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 bam. RGB mask. Okay, super awesome. We're going to be using this a little bit as well when we go into the later demos. So again, really powerful. It's kind of like one of those hippie tie-dye t-shirt things. And again, we can change the ordering as well, depending on what you want. You can obviously tell the float, like if you come in here, you can tell it to what to favor, how much priority something gets. And again, that's going to be reflected further on down the chain. Flow control, we don't really use that that much. I use this is I think much more advanced. This is actually controlling, like you can actually control how and where stuff flows, which is really useful. You know, you can take, depending on the direction that this is going, take your height field. You split that back out into, let's just do that. Yeah, you know what, we're not actually going to even go into this because this can get a little crazy. So that's kind of the initial basic stuff. We've gone over export and we've gone over the color maps. It can be really useful. Let's come over here. I'm just going to go File, New. And let's go over to macros. I'm going to hit this macro open file. Okay. Now, you're not going to probably have GeoGlyph installed, but there are some kind of underlying macros that are pretty cool. Mask breakups and whatnot are really useful to have. Seamless map, take it or leave it. Tiling textures in this is kind of a pain, unless you're sculpting on the stuff, and then that way I'd recommend doing it inside of ZBrush. But these the macros can be really useful. I'm just showing you guys this in particular, just to show you guys it can be kind of finicky to get these to work. So you select it, then you hit load macro, and that'll output whatever. And again, right now this is a quad spinner input, which, you know, I absolutely adore this. Let me take this and I'll show you another really awesome use of the combiner here if you want to amplify something. We'll add it, right? Simple kind of math, but it makes sense, right? Essentially what we're just saying is, hey, Oh, don't do the multi-scale. We're saying, hey, use this, add this together. Okay, and that again is really, really useful, especially that logic can be really useful, because especially if you need to start adding a bunch of things together, the thought process behind how you do it is really important. That's what's actually going to help give you the outcome that you probably want most of the time. It's just by thinking of it like that, not that you would want. That is kind of cool in a really weird way. Probably too many terraces, maybe. Something like that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Again, Geoglyph is a plugin from QuadSpinner. Those are the same guys who do Helios, which is a view plugin for clouds, which, by the way, that is a freaking awesome program if you want to play around with it. But just as you can like amplify an effect here, again, the macros, please dive into them. They're very useful. I just wanted to touch base on what the macro was. Just move you. Again, going back to the first one, moving it around, making it look organized, even though I'm not organized at all. I'm going to grab another erosion here. Let's do a different one. Let's do snow. And let's add a lot of snow. And let's adjust the snow line. That's obviously how far down the snow is going to, or yeah, how far down the snow is going to come from the top. Okay, like, think of top of the mountain. You can see it kind of falling down there. And let's build that. Okay, I'll pause this and let this thing finish. Okay, so that's what it looks like. But you're like, Dave, I want more snow. I don't know what the hell this is. I want more snow. Okay, well, let's just give you the same effect. I'm just going to add it, plug it right back. Not even going to add it. I'm just going to plug it right back in to that. Since we want more snow. Jeez Louise. It's a little too much. Again, this thing's pretty low res, but hey, look, it's only going to build the new additional snow, first of all, which is pretty rad. Okay, we'll look at that. Hey, look, there's snow, even though it doesn't look great, but it's, essentially kind of snow. And then we would do the exact same thing for the erosion. If we want to do coast erosion, if we want to do thermal weathering, we can do that as well. This isn't thermal weathering, that's just the standard erosion. But we can just literally stack these guys back to back. Control C, Control V. Oh, not in the height output. It's not necessary. Yes. Control C, Control V. And each time, each step is getting progressively more and more eroded. Right? You'll know it kicks on when that wire turns yellow. Okay. And again, this will take more time. Now let's say I only want to build up to this guy. I don't want to build this one. I just hit this yellow button here. It's going to build all up in the chain. It's going to look at everything that's current. It's just going to build what you need, right, based off what you have selected. Okay, this guy isn't built. Like if I look at this guy in here, it's all cool looking. I come over to this guy, it's all low res and weird looking, right? So now we can use it to build the rest of it. Okay, build it. Yeah, it just looks like ass. Could have stacked it so many times. In the terrain so low res anyway. Okay. And again, you can step through. We can look at any part in this and see the progression along the way, which is really useful. Okay. Awesome. So this is essentially, well, actually, let me show you a few more cool little things here just before we get you on your way and diving into the awesome world that is World Machine. Let's go back into our generator. Let's talk about our layout generator. Some of the terms and stuff that I'm talking about here, by the way, I'm going to iterate again in the lecture. So if you miss something, more than likely I'm going to cover it because I'm like a broken record. I'll just say the same damn thing 50 times. This is exactly what it sounds like. We have box, circle, polygon, lines. This, if I left click and start painting out, this is going to allow us to freehand terrain. Very cool. Okay. The spacebar will take you into the overview map. And you can actually change the extents if you want. We're not going to do that in these tutorials. We're just going to kind of keep it as is. If I double click, I'm going to get my profile. I'm going to get my shape common properties. We have the ability to go in and actually change, click edit, change that curve just by adding points. And again, this should look familiar because we talked a little bit about what the curve was doing earlier. It's just a shape guide. Accept that. Look at that. That's hot. It's not really. Let's adjust the fall off distance again so we can bring that back into the field. And again, you can see how much that's affecting. Now, if I want to get this guy in here and I want this nice slope, the easiest way to do that is to click on the top, right click and hit scale and just shrink the top of this guy down. Okay, I can tell the fall off distance to go back out. Okay, so if you want kind of like a mountaintop or whatever, this is a great way to do it. Okay, the next thing that we want to talk about is this breakup. Click this. I'm going to edit this guy. Breakup is literally going to do exactly what it sounds like. It's going to run a fractal along the outside of this, and it's going to move it along, and it's going to kind of adjust it. I can tell this terrain how much of this I want it to like be impacted by it. Okay, and you can get really far off from your original form, which is pretty cool. Okay, and you don't need just one shape, right? Let's say for whatever reason I wanted to have a box carved out of the side of this terrain. How do I do that? Well, for starters, I draw the box. Okay, box is going to inherit some of this similar settings. Let's adjust that fall off distance so it looks more boxy. And we're looking at it from over here, so let's just left click this guy. Let's tell it not to really participate in the shape breakup, okay? Because you know what? To hell with it. We don't really need it. Just scaled it down right there with this little handle. See, I'm just adjusting that fall off there. And again, scale works as well. Scale that guy right down. Now, we have a positive effect and we have a minus effect. If we hit minus, it's going to do just that. It's going to minus it right on out. Okay? And again, we can move it and scale it. Fall off distance will obviously affect how much goes where. It's pretty cool. It's like this weird blob thing. Sorry. I need to not do this so much. I need to go outside. Anyway, so we're happy with the layout. Let's come back over into our little height field here. What do you think we're going to do with this? We could tell this to go into our shaping guide. That's going to help drive the shape. I could also say, hey, use this as a mask. And then that is only going to work on, let me just nuke this guy. That's only going to work on this. Okay, it's not even going to care that, it's not even going to use this as a shaping guide. It's going to say I can only do work on this section here, okay? And there is a difference, right? This is a straight mask. You can see the mask input. This is saying, hey, this is what I'm kind of suggesting that you do. You know, still be a fractal, but take what I'm saying into consideration. Again, we control that by this, right? Okay, so again, this is super useful and super powerful for a number of different things. But the layout generator is really, really useful. You can take, you can do all sorts of fun things with it, especially if you want to get really art directy, which is really nice. Let's just throw another erosion on this guy for shits and giggles. Just because I like to see what the erosion is going to do. Increase that, push that sediment carry, so we can kind of really chasm that out. And we'll come into here. Okay, so super powerful, right? Like, you can do all sorts of really great things with this without even doing a lot. This, I was just dicking around, and this kind of looks cool, right? Um, and this stuff can be used for all sorts of really awesome things. For whatever reason, if you wanted this to be an alpha inside of ZBrush, you got it. Okay, you can just spit this right out as a TIFF, open it up in Photoshop, just resave the TIFF because ZBrush can be a little angry sometimes with TIFF formats, and you're good to go. Okay, so this is the kind of the hopefully the intro section. If I, hopefully you guys when you play with this. Now you do watch this intro and then you kind of watch what I'm going to do in the other videos. You're going to be like, oh, I get what the hell Dave's talking about. He's not totally full of shit. Or at least he's not leaving me in the dark because, well, those of you who know me know the ADD is strong with this one. So anyway, let's talk a little bit really quick too. If I just want to screw with the settings, hit randomize, look at what I just did. I made something cool. Okay? It took into account what I kind of had. It basically moved the terrain. It actually shifted the layout. Where's the extents? What did it do? Yeah, it just moved the actual object. Come back into here. There it is. Changed a bunch of the distortion settings. Let's do it again. And again. Actually, didn't even move it, I think. No, it didn't move it. My bad. I'm just... Oh, come on. Drinking a little too much. Yeah, but it'll just randomize your settings. It'll randomize the flow and the erosion stuff. So if you guys have, like, let's say you have, to the example that I mentioned earlier, you have the box and you want to erode a bunch of stuff off it. If you want to make a bunch of alphas off of that and you don't want to spend the time dicking with all this, this is a great way to do it. You can just literally sit up here and spit out a bunch of fun little height maps and stuff, and Bob's your uncle. There you go. It's done, right? This is a procedural workflow, okay? Which basically means we're not going to come in here and go, oh, I want to adjust this. I'm going to put a little line here. We do that in ZBrush. This is the broad stroke, hit it with a hammer, get something out. And that's what I think makes World Machine so awesome, and it's also really cool. Not to say that you can't make some incredibly horrible looking things. We do, and you guys actually get to bear witness to some of that, so it should be pretty fun. So, like I said, hopefully at the end of this, you guys have a really solid understanding of World Machine. Maybe you pick up some new heavy metal tunes along the way. Who knows? Could happen. And like I said, at the end of this, if you guys like this, great. This is just an intro, okay? We're not covering everything. We can do some pretty crazy stuff with this program. If you guys want more, let me know. And let me know what you guys like to see next. So, it's the end of the year. It's 2014 right now. So I'm going to probably make another car or a vehicle or something, I don't know, and have fun with it. But again, World Machine, super powerful, really awesome, and you can do a lot with it. So hopefully you guys are going to enjoy this. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the flip side. I'm actually going to play with this a little bit, though, just because the overall height of this is disturbing me. Just lower that. It's not getting coolness. Top. Maybe it's my... Oh, no. No, Tim. Why is that driving it so high? Edit shape properties. Pull you down just a little bit more. Okay. Yay, now we have some fun fractaliness. Some things that we're going to talk about. We're going to be leveraging some tools from a really awesome artist, Neil Blevins. His 3ds Max scripts are pretty infamous and pretty badass and well known at this point. But he's the guy who made the Soulburn scripts. He also has brought a lot of the Pixar workflows into ZBrush in terms of just kind of more film-esque, like trilinear projections and that kind of thing. And that's actually one of the things we're going to leverage is the trilinear projections. So again, thanks to Neil, we're going to do some really cool stuff with this. And I think that's another fun little thing about these tutorials. These like kind of mini tutorials is that a lot of the artists are, all working together, doing fun little things. So it's pretty cool. And really quick, just because I want to give a shout out to these guys because they're really, really talented. It's these guys. It's called the Matte Department. They are a fantastic group of artists. It's Anthony and Fob, and obviously their work speaks for itself. Their tutorials are really good. They're Blizzard dudes, and they combine a lot of the environment stuff with matte painting, texturing stuff, and they do World Machine tutorials and all kinds of fun stuff. So these guys are super, super talented and really, really good. Anthony also has the best hair I've ever seen on a human being. So I would, if you guys end up picking up his stuff and Fabio's stuff, tell him they're really good. And make sure you comment on Anthony's hair. Anyway, it's the Matte Department. Super, super useful. And let's just dive right back into it, guys, and I hope you guys enjoy this, and let's make some 3D goodness. Randomize. I'm just kidding, I'm not going to make you guys watch me randomize this. Alright, I'll see you guys in a few.